Mostly vacation. I was up at Lizard Island for about 5 days, here in Sydney for 5 days, and then I'll on Wednesday go down and
Halo teman-teman, selamat datang kembali di channel Sarjana Muda yang selalu membahas tentang inspirasi dan motivasi hidup. Hari ini saya akan membahas tentang salah satu tokoh paling berpengaruh di dunia teknologi dan bisnis, Bill Gates. Siapa sih yang nggak kenal Bill Gates? Pendiri Microsoft dan salah satu orang terkaya di dunia. Tapi yang menarik bukan hanya kekayaannya, melainkan pelajaran hidup yang dia bagikan tentang bagaimana kita bisa meraih kesuksesan. Bill Gates bukan cuma dikenal karena Microsoft, tapi juga karena pemikirannya yang tajam dan filosofi hidupnya yang bisa banget kita jadikan panduan. Dia sering banget berbagi tips dan pelajaran tentang bagaimana mencapai sukses, nggak cuma di bisnis tapi juga dalam kehidupan secara umum. Di video ini saya akan bahas secara detail apa saja kata-kata dan prinsip yang dipegang teguh oleh Bill Gates untuk meraih kesuksesan. Salah satu hal pertama yang sering ditekankan oleh Bill Gates adalah pentingnya passion. Gates pernah bilang, "Your work is going to fill a large part of your life, and the only way to be truly satisfied is to do what you believe is great work. And the only way to do great work is to love what you do." Artinya kita harus benar-benar mencintai apa yang kita kerjakan. Passion ini yang akan membuat kita terus bersemangat, bahkan saat menghadapi tantangan. Kalau kita nggak punya passion, kita akan mudah menyerah. Gates sendiri sangat passionate tentang teknologi, dan itulah yang membuatnya terus inovatif. Bill Gates juga pernah mengatakan bahwa kegagalan adalah guru terbaik. It's fine to celebrate success, but it is more important to heed the lessons of failure. Menurut Gates, setiap kegagalan membawa pelajaran berharga yang bisa kita gunakan untuk memperbaiki diri dan strategi kita ke depan. Dia sendiri nggak langsung sukses saat mendirikan Microsoft. Ada banyak tantangan dan kegagalan yang harus dia hadapi sebelum Microsoft menjadi perusahaan raksasa seperti sekarang. Kerja keras adalah sesuatu yang nggak bisa dilewatkan kalau kita bicara tentang kesuksesan. Gates selalu menekankan bahwa kesuksesan nggak datang dengan instan. Butuh usaha, dedikasi, dan disiplin. Gates sering bekerja 16 jam sehari saat awal-awal membangun Microsoft. Dia percaya bahwa kerja keras adalah bahan bakar untuk mencapai impian. Gates juga dikenal sebagai sosok yang haus akan pengetahuan. Dia pernah mengatakan, "Aku menghabiskan banyak waktu membaca karena aku pikir jika kamu membaca cukup banyak, ada tingkat kepercayaan yang kamu dapatkan." Membaca dan belajar adalah cara terbaik untuk terus berkembang. Dunia ini terus berubah dan kita harus terus belajar hal-hal baru agar tetap relevan dan bisa beradaptasi. Nah, itulah beberapa pelajaran penting yang bisa kita ambil dari Bill Gates tentang bagaimana cara mencapai kesuksesan. Dari passion, belajar dari kegagalan, kerja keras, belajar terus-menerus, hingga berinovasi, semua ini adalah kunci yang bisa kita terapkan dalam kehidupan kita sehari-hari. Jangan lupa untuk terus berjuang, jangan menyerah, dan selalu berpikir ke depan. Sampai jumpa di video berikutnya, dan tetap semangat meraih impianmu.
Years in particular. Let me start with some of the global health issues. Let me start with COVID. I always felt that COVID was like an X-ray of societies in the sense that it revealed the strengths and weaknesses, it revealed the frailties of societies. In your country, I think it's fair to say that COVID exposed many political and institutional frailties and inequalities. You look at a country like China, for example, on the other hand, they had a completely different strategy for dealing with COVID, but they probably held on to COVID zero for too long. They did a lot to strangle economic growth, and of course, limit the civil liberties of Chinese people. It's very hard to make policies towards a pandemic in the middle of it, but when analysts look back on the pandemic in 20 years' time, which countries do you think they will say got it right? Who got the balance right? What are the lessons we should learn from how our different countries approached this dreadful disease?
I would say any country got it totally right. Some of the things that would stand out would be that Australia and about 7 other countries did population scale diagnostics early on and had quarantine policies associated with that meant that you kept in that first year when there were no vaccines. Hospitals could have gotten overloaded like they did in many countries. You kept the level of infection low. So at the end of the day, the Australian death rate per capita will be about 12% of most rich countries, including the United States. And it's that first 90 days where the US did not scale up diagnosis and quarantine. So that's definitely a best practice that in the future, countries need to have dedicated personnel, need to practice how they connect up with in this case, the PCR diagnostic industry was the magic there. We're going to have even better diagnostics that are cheap and that we can manufacture in the billions very quickly for the next time. Another best practice was the U.S. government funding of vaccine research. And the U.S. put out $14 billion to a variety of vaccine companies, not just U.S. vaccine companies. And that accelerated the availability of both mRNA and non-mRNA vaccines, that if you get those to people over 60 or who have immune system deficiencies, you can cut the death rate by about 70%. And so any country that deferred infection out into the period where you had vaccines, you had some treatments, and we shifted from the initial Wuhan variant to the Omicron variant that kills about 40% as much as the original variant, then you get a huge benefit. So for example, China, where we'll never know the true death numbers, but because they're deferring it to where it's Omicron and they have some level of vaccination as a percent on a per capita basis, they'll have about a third of the death rate of the rich countries, including the United States. So even though you're right, it was a huge cost to pay, and very few countries could have actually organized themselves to suppress infection. They should have jumped on vaccines, particularly for the elderly, much faster, and that would have allowed them to open up somewhat sooner than they did. So nobody, I would say, gets an A on this one. Sadly, epidemics come along so rarely that it's easy to be incompetent. Earthquakes, fires, they come more often, storms. And so governments, they're pretty good on fires. There hasn't been a, 5,000 death fire in the world for a long, long time. Epidemics, hopefully this will get us to take them seriously, at least for the next 20 or 30 years.
What about at the international level? What about the World Health Organization? It turned out to be polarizing. There was a lot of polarized discussion about the WHO in your country and mine, a lot of criticism.